Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cornerstone commentary presented by the University of Kentucky Federal Credit Union. I'm Trenton Upchurch, and today we have an absolute legend of college esports, Billy Sprout, the current director of Collegiate Esports for Mainline. Since founding UConn Gaming Club in 2012, Billy Sprout has dedicated his life to social gaming and esports programs. That passion has given him a wide spectrum of experiences, including hundreds of hours of AAA live stream productions, live gaming events in partnership with ESPN and the Fiesta Bowl, and esports tournaments with six-figure prize pools. To date, his tournaments have connected students from 1,200 universities and have awarded over $3 million in scholarships to students to find a better balance between social gaming and individual development. Billy Sprout, welcome to the Cornerstone commentary.
Hi, Trent. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to be here. It's early for me over on the West Coast, but I will wake up at any time to talk about esports.
We're very glad to have you. Billy, your background in collegiate esports is unique and it's incredible. You were president and founder of UConn Gaming. You've been a part of the growth and development of TESPA chapters on campuses across the country, one of the earliest examples of organized esports competition. Now you're working on one of the leading companies offering a tournament platform that will drive collegiate esports in the future. So right off the bat, I've got probably the two hardest hitting questions I can ask you. What was your first game and what's your favorite game and why?
Well, hidden right at the start. So first game was a game called Myst, M-Y-S-T, on Windows 98, before some of you were born. I could not get it to work, so I would insert the CD. I would see this awesome intro cinematic thing, this awesome intro screen, and I don't know what it was, what I was doing wrong, but I could not actually play. I could not get past that screen. 5-year-old me, 6-year-old me was stumped by this game. But it was that mystique that motivated me to then try Sim Theme Park, which was also Windows 98, I believe. That was the first game I actually played, actually managed to play. Favorite game? Overall, I'd say Hades is probably my favorite game.
Hades?
Design-wise, replayability. In terms of total hours, I've played probably almost 5,000 hours of Dota 2. But I don't like that game.
It's kind of crazy how the games we spend the most time in is the one that we ask ourselves, why did I play that much? You know, Counter-Strike, Dota, League, those big games like that, we're always wondering why we end up with that much time.
It makes no sense, but here we are.
It really doesn't. So your background, I mean, it's incredible. Starting UConn, UConn Esports way back in 2012. How did you get to that point? And from there, how did you end up with Mainline today? What's your path?
Most of the steps I took were happy circumstance combined with my persistent ability to say, yeah, sure, let's try that. That sounds fun. I started the UConn Gaming Club when the previous gaming club, which was StarCraft only, started to fall apart because the previous founders were graduating. I picked that up, started running Dota stuff, so that's where I clocked most of my hours, was when I should have been doing homework. But I was organizing, I was doing esports, so it was fine. And all along the way, there were just these turning points where I was offered an opportunity or an event came along. So the International was one of the first big events I ran an event for, like a viewing party, like a LAN watch party thing. I started at TESPA basically working as a volunteer back in 2014, I think, when they ran their first tournament. Actually, it was their second tournament, but the first tournament on like an actual platform and not just Google Sheets. If anyone listening is a TO, then they're very familiar with the Google Sheets tournament. It's kind of hard to beat. I said yes to that. I said yes to an internship with them later on in 2014. That was probably the best summer of my life. And I just kept getting lucky and mixing that luck with a willingness and a privilege to be able to say, yeah, sure, let's try it. So, I mean, anyone listening is probably a student or probably hasn't heard of what Mainline is, but that's because we primarily work with schools. We work directly with schools to either run an intramural at that school or to work with them in aggregate and host conference level leagues or national leagues. So I'm kind of taking that micro community focus that I started with and expanding it to a broader scope to hopefully have a greater impact on the esports world.
Definitely. Were there any intermediate steps between UConn and finding yourself at Mainline?
Yes. So the big intermediate step was TESPA. For those of you who might not know, TESPA was formerly the Collegiate Esports division of Blizzard Entertainment. It was never really like formally stated. We were more of like a sponsor, but TESPA was wholly owned by Blizzard. Mike Morheim in particular was on our board of directors. And that was the big middle step. It was roughly 6-7 years of that process, and my total storyline is 8 or 9, so it's a huge portion of it.
Oh wow!
And the path I took there was I started out as a chapter leader representative for the UConn Gaming Club. That's how they found me. So I was one of their earlier chapters. I think I joined right after people like UC San Diego, University of Nevada, who were some of the founding members. That was back when it was a really scrappy network of gaming clubs. I started working for them as a contractor, then an intern, and a contractor again. Did not get a second internship, so I panicked. But then I got a job back in 2016, working for them full time, and I worked for them up until August of 2020. I should probably display it, but there is a Blizzard 5-year sword leaning against my wall. So I've technically worked here for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
But then in August 2020, I realized, wait, this is a really easy time to change my working environment because I'm very privileged and safe and bored. And so I took a jump to the startup life, and that's where I am now. So that's probably the shortest portion of my story is the current one so far.
And they always lead to bigger parts, though. So you've played, from what I'm hearing, of course, 7 years with TESPA. You've played an incredible part in the growth of gaming and esports on campuses. So, of course, your opinion definitely has, you've had a lot of experience with this. Where do you see college esports expanding in the next 3 years, the next 10 years? What are the next big steps that college esports will and has to take to develop the way it should?
Great question. The way it should expand is after this whole COVID thing is behind us. So in 5 years, we'll continue that's what it feels like at this point. We'll continue the exponential growth and adoption rate of varsity esports programs that I saw occurring back before the pandemic started. It was absolutely incredible how quickly schools were kind of jumping on. I mean, the bandwagon it seems kind of reductive, but that's literally how schools work. Schools work by seeing what other schools are doing and saying, "Oh, we should do that too." Mm-hmm. That's how they all started doing research back in like the 1800s. So it's a good thing. It's a good phenomenon, and they usually don't move this quickly. Schools are notoriously slow, riddled with bureaucracy, and hesitant to change. That's how they lived so long, is they wait out most of the fads before they jump on those bandwagons. But esports has been around now and has been slowly gaining adoption since probably 2016 from the administrative level. We need to see more of that because at the end of the day, there's a lot of amazing things that a student-run club can do, but there is a very low ceiling to that before you either start digging inordinately into the student's individual time, which they will absolutely do because it's a lot more fun than school, but they shouldn't do because it's too much more fun than school. School is boring for a reason. And also there's a time limit for how many years they can put into it, because they are going to graduate or they're going to leave the university. And when they leave, at least 50% of the time, they're not trying to find a replacement. So the momentum that they gained could very well just be lost. So that administration is a critical element to maintaining that momentum. And usually, if all goes well, bolstering it and accelerating it exponentially to the point where you're having scholarships, you're hiring broadcasters, you're building out an esports arena. The end game of esports, I think, is just where we, I don't know where this, where we just start calling it social gaming. So there you have a varsity esports program on a campus, but the campus is also saying, okay, well, esports is just a competitive element of gaming, and gaming is a huge factor in the lives of the next generation of students. They're all digital natives. 85% of them play a game or two. Usually Fortnite and Minecraft are the two. But that's a generalization. It's much more nuanced than that, I'm sure.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's how they connect with each other, and I think there's a lot of potential for an ill effect that gaming can have on someone's individual development. But if it's utilized correctly, there's an incredible benevolent force that gaming can start to play. It's how I met all my friends. It's how I learned how to communicate the way I am on this podcast. So pretty okay compared to how I started. Obviously, it's how I got my career. I feel like it's difficult for that in particular to kind of blossom, because there's only so many careers in esports. But it's an incredibly benevolent force if tapped into correctly, and organizations like yours are pretty much the end game that I envision. Just happening at more campuses and continuing to expand as they figure out, okay, this is our identity, this is our benefit, and this is what we want to do.
I'd have to agree. Social gaming, especially, I have to agree with that concept. Competitive esports is, it's my bread and butter. A lot of people like competition, but sometimes, especially in a place such as the Cornerstone, you have people come to hang out and have a good time. Mm-hmm. Competition is not always the centerpiece of what gaming is about. It's really nice to see that acknowledged, because not everybody's as tooth and nail about being competitive.
Yeah, for sure. The way I think about it is a competitive esports team is at most 6, an active roster of 6. The average gaming club size
in the hundreds.
I don't know any actual numbers anymore, but it's usually in the hundreds. And it could, like, the number of gamers on a campus,
thousands,
is
it's not
usually
tens of.
As the high school generation, like the previous generation that was in high school, kind of starts graduating, it's going to be 4.5 out of 5 students play a game or two. A lot of people don't include the fraternity and sorority people who play like FIFA and Madden, but I do, because those are gamers. We don't need to gatekeep them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing like playing, those sports games on the couch with the boys or the girls whenever, especially when you're waiting for the college basketball season to start. What a better way.
What better way?
So UK, we've been running with an esports program for several years now. Started with Wally. Now we had Thomas Bailey. Now we've got Sean Wood. If you were starting an esports program tomorrow, you had to start from scratch, the University of Esports, but there's no esports team at the University of Esports. You're going to start it. What are 2 or 3 things that you would focus on specifically?
So the first thing a lot of schools jump into as soon as they can, or at least try to, is finding the best players. 9 times out of 10, that's a waste of effort in the first couple of years, either because you don't know how to find the right players yet. There isn't a mechanism for them to kind of discovered and pulled out of the woodwork, or you're an out of touch faculty member who doesn't technically have the skills needed to recruit a high caliber team. And that's not me trying to attack Keith or anyone in a similar position. It's me acknowledging the fact that most of us, myself included, I'm not good at Dota. There's a reason I got into organizing events around Dota. It's because I'm not good at it. I preferred to kind of tap into the social element of it. And I wouldn't know what to look for without like having an official coach on the team. So unless you have the resources to hire coaches right off the bat, find the best players you can and build like a homebrew varsity roster. And that should be the total amount of effort you put into your competition for the first year or two. Most of your effort should be put into discovering what the demographics are at your school. So Michael Aguilar, my colleagues at Oklahoma, has a very analytical, like quantitative approach to his esports program, and he is at a huge Power 5 esports program, so that's really important. He speaks the language that his administration understands. He knows what percentage of his players, of his student body are gamers, so you can extrapolate that math and say, okay, this program can net impact this number of people, and it's in the thousands. Here's our demographic gender-wise. Here's why we need to improve the way we're interacting with women when they first enter the gaming space, make them feel a lot safer than they currently are, and empower them to start to join leadership positions. He has all these initiatives lined up, and they're all backed by data that you can't really know about your student body until you ask, until you start doing surveys, until you start digging into the matriculation data. So start a couple competitive teams, have them manage themselves or give them a coach, and have that coach target a 2+ year runway of actually finding GM level players, and then focus more on learning about what your school looks like. Because that's how you're going to figure out, okay, this is the energy, and I'm using a Michael Aguilar word there. This is the energy that exists on campus, and this is how I propose we tap into it. A lot of campuses will really benefit from a LAN or an intramural. A lot of campuses won't. A lot of them will simply want to get in a giant room and play Smash. And they don't consider that a LAN, because LANs are for nerds. So there's all these nuances that there's idiosyncrasies on each individual campus, and it's frustrating for people like me who are looking at it at a macro level. We have to do something different for every single school. It's not frustrating. It's a fun challenge, but it's kind of annoying sometimes. At the individual school level, you need to tap into that unique niche that your school has, because there's no way you are fully aware of it yet.
The insight is just incredible. I love the ideas. I'm kind of just blown away. It's nice to just hear the perspective of somebody that knows so much about esports. For that, we've seen a lot more corporate partnerships, sponsorships, schools and companies tying together to build these esports, to build these, the cornerstones, to supply technology, to, give us the tools we need to succeed in a competitive and a casual level. What are some points of emphasis you think that are going to be important as people build these relationships, as people build these sort of ties around gaming and esports?
From the brand side, the most important thing is authenticity. Most of the current student generation, all of the current student generation is part of Generation Z, and Generation Z, like I mentioned, are digital natives to a level where millennials can't even imagine. They've had iPads and stuff since they were 4, for better or for worse. Mostly for better, usually, as long as they're exercising restraint. So they are not strangers to digital advertising, and in fact, they're familiar with it in a way that most of us who grew up watching normal TV with normal commercials every 6 minutes would never be familiar with. If a brand wants to get involved, especially with a university, they have to get involved with the motive of, okay, let's use the resources we have to make gaming better on this campus, to make the gaming environment better on this campus, and thus expand those benevolent efforts that I mentioned before that esports can have through that brand partnership. Intel does a really good job of this at a macro level, because a lot of their promotion is either cooperative, so they'll promote through a partner, like the partners that are using Intel chips. That's where the Intel Inside logo or jingle, whatever you call it, comes into play. That's usually not aired by Intel itself; it's aired by Intel partners. And sorry, my sprinkler system just came on. I'm not sure if you can hear that. But when they do a partnership themselves, it's to focus on education, like electrical engineering stuff, AI, all these really cool technological advancements. And they kind of just put their sticker on it and give the people that they're sponsoring the bandwidth to say, okay, Intel is empowering us to do X, Y, Z. That's how you approach this current generation in a genuine way. You can't just throw money at it and say, hey, fellow kids, buy Wolf Cola. It'll work for some people, but it won't work at a macro level.
You got to be a little more subtler.
Yeah.
Kind of lead people to it thinking it's their idea.
Yeah.
So jumping off of that, what are some of the biggest esports, partnerships wise? Who do you think has helped be the driving force? Say, for example, my time at the University of Kentucky, HyperX has been incredible. The headsets, the microphones, they've always been a part of, every broadcast I've done for the University of Kentucky. Is there anybody that you've seen kind of rise to the top, rise to the occasion for promoting students, promoting esports, promoting these sorts of social gaming places?
It's difficult to generalize, but I mean, honestly, the two that stand out to me are, first of all, HyperX, and who owns them? HP.
Believe so.
I think HP in general has been awesome. HP Omen has their logo on so many individual school LAN centers and stuff. They're doing an incredible amount of work to kind of jumpstart that LAN center renaissance. HyperX is, of course, on the peripheral side, doing amazing work there. Republic of Gamers is also really great. They were a sponsor of ours, of TESPA's, for as long as I can remember, probably like 3 or 4 years plus. And the amount of merchandise and like actual value they allowed us to put in the hands of students was incredible. Intel, of course, is continuing to make a lot of great moves. That Intel Rising event that's happening every year is really awesome. Shout out to Victor, who runs that. Those are the big three, I think. I think Alienware is trying to get more involved in collegiate. I haven't seen any big moves from them yet, but that might just be because I'm not really actively looking. I'm one of those skeptics where unless they're like throwing a bunch of stuff at students, I won't really pay a lot of attention.
I can say we've got some nice Alienware, some serious builds. I'm running on one right now here at the Cornerstone, and I've never been disappointed. They're powerhouses. Nice.
Well, in that case, shout out to Alienware for all the incredible stuff they're doing already.
It's definitely been fantastic. Speaking of building sort of space like the Cornerstone, the place where all this happens and everything goes down, have you been involved in building sort of these spaces or helping, give students ideas when it comes to designing spaces like this for their competitive spaces? Or are you, as you said, finding a room and throwing people into it for a not LAN of Smash Brothers?
No, that's the kind of downside to the perspective I've had, or like the positions I've held, is that I've never been able to like directly get involved in that kind of thing. When I was working at Blizzard, I served some time as like the licensing contact for schools to find out how to get the rights to use certain Blizzard marks and IP. So occasionally I would send like some really cool, like high res, fair use graphics from Overwatch or WoW or Hearthstone to a school, and they would freak out, get really excited, and print it across their entire wall. But for the most part, I just got the privilege of kind of watching it happen from a bird's eye view. So, for example, I haven't looked into the UK progress for a while. It was a pleasant surprise that you guys had Cornerstone up and running. So it's usually just a series of pleasant surprises, and then that's where I'll see the brands and be like, oh wow, thanks Alienware and HyperX. You're doing great work for these students and changing lives in ways that they probably can't even imagine.
Oh, absolutely. I remember the first time I came to tour the Cornerstone. I was one of the lucky few people that got to tour it early, and it was just a sense of awe walking in and seeing the space dedicated to just gathering and competing and having a grand old time. The arena that I'm in right now, 100+ strong seating and a stage that I'm sitting on that we can host intercollegiate lands. And it's something that I'm seriously looking forward to. Let's talk a bit about your time, hosting AAA live stream productions and helping put those together. What's your favorite one you've done so far? We talked a bit, or I'd mentioned early, ESPN and the Fiesta Bowl. What was that about?
So that wasn't the biggest or my favorite.
Really?
And those were actually two separate events. So the ESPN Collegiate Esports Championship happened in 2019.
Yeah,
that was separate from the Fiesta Bowl, which I think was 2018. I don't know, the years all blur together, especially now after COVID. It's just one giant fuzzy
The next
mess.
3 years are just going to be, we're just going to compress them together. It'll be all right.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest production that I've been like individually contributed to in a meaningful way is BlizzCon. So every Blizzard employee would always like help in some way at BlizzCon, and because I was on the esports team specifically, I would get involved in some of the more technical roles. My favorite broadcast that I played a part in was 3 years in a row. I forget which years. I think it's 17, 18, and 19. 2017, 2018, 19. I was the replay producer for World of Warcraft Arena, which is funny because 2 months before I did all of that, I had never really played World of Warcraft Arena. I had played WoW. I play a lot of WoW still to this day. But I had to very quickly learn, okay, this is how PvP works. Oh God, it's one of the most complicated and nuanced competitive games out there, because every single of the 27 specs has dozens of abilities. And now I have to be able to like go back and break down the really cool moments with these two replay operators who have never played WoW before. So it's a really fun mix of, oh God, this is BlizzCon, and oh God, I kind of know what I'm doing. And oh God, they don't know, the people I'm working with don't know half the words I say, so I have to translate. It was a very chaotic but fun learning opportunity. So that was my favorite one. ESPN Collegiate Esports Championship was a collection of tournaments that culminated at an event that ESPN ran down in Houston. That was a lot of fun. I didn't really get too involved on the broadcast level, but they produced a documentary about it. It was streaming live on ESPN for a while. And that was really cool. That was unfortunately then followed by the ESPN Esports shutdown. Hopefully it wasn't the cause of it. Who knows?
I doubt it. I'm sure it was great.
Yeah. Fiesta Bowl, for those of you who might not know, is a show match that exists in traditional sports. It's a bowl event, which are kind of like main season adjacent show matches. And they dipped their toes into esports for the first time. They were incredible partners. And they hosted the finals of one of our Overwatch tournaments. One of the major roles I played at Blizzard was overseeing the Overwatch collegiate ecosystem. And that's where I really got to witness the exponential growth of varsity programs, because I was seeing, okay, 2016, we had 10 varsity programs. Oh God, we have 20. Okay, now it's 40. It didn't continue going exponential, because then we'd be at crazy amount of number now.
4.6 billion esports programs in the world.
Yes, there we go. Wow. I love math. But yeah, that Fiesta Bowl event was in particular the finals of one of our Overwatch tournaments.
honestly, I mean, it's nice to know that we've had the chances to put together so many big events like these, and that you've been a part of just some incredible stuff like this. 1,200 universities have been tied to things that you've done together with these universities, and you've awarded $3 million in scholarships to students to find a balance between social gaming and their, personal development. How is it just based on winning? Is it based on where does that come from?
So that part of my bio is mainly focused on the idea that we would have a very wide range of pricing available for like people who participated in our tournaments. Usually it was all kind of top heavy in that if you wouldn't probably get much unless you made it to top 16 or higher. The catch-22 there that I made sure our students were aware of is, okay, if you're going to make it this far, you're doing it to win prizing, but the prizing is a scholarship. So if you are going to compromise your academic career to win the scholarship, you then will not really have much academics to put the scholarship towards. So that made it a lot more difficult for people to actually qualify and properly utilize it. But it allowed us to kind of say, okay, well, the people who are making it then are the folks who were good enough at competing, but also made sure to prioritize properly and say, okay, this gaming stuff is fun, but it is a social element. It's a kind of a side project relative to my studies. A lot of that prizing was given out in the 4 years of Heroes of the Dorm, which was a Heroes of the Storm competitive event that awarded like free tuition, like full tuition, like full ride scholarships to the team that won. We did 4 years of that and kind of called it a collegiate career and cut it there. But that was just about $2 million of those $3 million, and then the last $1 million was sprinkled across many different programs for many different games. Overwatch, Hearthstone, and World of Warcraft, most of all.
Oh, definitely. I completely understand finding the people that are good enough to compete, but also actually care enough about their education to know that sometimes you can't compete. I missed out on a huge tournament this past Monday because I had projects due for graduate school. So I know how that is. It's unfortunate sometimes. You miss out on good brackets, but some things are more important. Good job on being responsible.
I engineered that test for you, and you passed.
Thank you, Billy. I'm glad to know that I took responsibility, and it meant something.
I'm always happy to meddle where I can. Just kidding. By the way, for the listeners,
never would have guessed.
I have a monotone, so sometimes I have to clarify.
No, Billy is secretly running every graduate school that has ever existed to see if you're good enough to compete in esports, but know that you shouldn't sometimes.
Absolutely. It's totally worth the effort.
All right. So the next big one I've got is NIL, name, image, likeness, branding. Essentially, it's been a hot topic in 2021. It's been a hot topic in general. Finding your own way to brand as individuals, as schools, as esports teams. Do you see ways that it'll cross with aspects of gaming that are competitive? Will gaming become entertainment rather than a competition league? Because basketball, for example, it's competitive, but a lot of the times the most interesting things are the entertainment moments, the big moments, the big dunks, the big threes. It's not always about the grit and grind, but sometimes about the cool moments. A good spike in Smash Brothers, a huge ace in Counter-Strike, all the different pieces and baubles that you can pull together from different esports. Where do you find that crossing with name, images, and likenesses of individuals and schools and so on?
So when I talk about name, image, likeness, it's usually in the context of NCAA student athletes and the NCAA's amateurism rules. There's not a lot of practical overlap between that and an esports program, simply by nature of the fact that if you're a student athlete on a campus, you probably, you may have time to do extracurriculars, but demographically speaking, they're less likely to actually want to join the gaming club, at least from what I've seen. The biggest crossover that I can think of, and for those of you who might not know, NIL was something that didn't really exist a year ago legally, because student athletes that were competing for NCAA schools did not have the right to make any money off of their name, image, likeness, whether or not it was related to their kind of athletic status at the university. If they made $5 from a Twitch sub, they might lose their scholarship, and they probably would if the NCAA found out. The NCAA has been dipping their toes into trying to figure out what esports is, and every time they do, they clash immediately, because their amateurism policies are just incompatible with the modern life, for the most part, and also every aspect of esports and every tenet of social gaming that exists on the internet, because most of them exist to uplift the creators, and if a student is a creator, they need to be able to make money off of anything they do. So the overlap I see is sort of a blend between the influencer marketing infrastructure that exists now on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Specifically, athletes on the campus typically have a larger following on average than the non-athletes, just because there's a level of celebrity there. If those folks can do paid partnerships, esports entities can basically go to a football player on campus and say, hey, would you mind promoting this event that's coming up at the Cornerstone in a couple weeks? And then the student athlete gets paid X number of dollars to promote it. They allow the Cornerstone event to tap into that network. The value there is not just the increased reach overall, but the specific reach that the student athletes network will have over the non-endemic, the non-gaming endemic groups on a campus. So people who follow a student athlete influencer are much less likely to be, STEM majors, the stereotypical accounting and marketing majors that then end up getting involved in esports. And they're going to have a different demographic that they have access to. So I'm kind of rambling here, but there is probably potential for influencer students to profit off of their own network, and there's prospects for school programs and brands who are sponsoring school programs to benefit off of that as well. So there's a mutually beneficial situation that could arise. I haven't seen it happen yet, but it could very well happen in the future.
I think it's important that people have the ability to, be themselves and do what they will, especially in the point of name, image, likeness, because they are their own people. And I think it's unfortunate that sometimes they couldn't up to, I believe it was last year where the rules, I believe, changed. They couldn't, but now we can have, the big, the Zion Williamsons playing Fortnite and on Twitch and whatnot. So, or Anthony Davis, who knows?
It was a couple months ago. It was up. Amateurism existed in its previous state up until April or May of this year.
I must be misremembering. I could, like you said, the years are just blurring together. I thought it was well back to the conversation had started, but we had finally gotten an answer. But
yeah,
man, it's only been a couple months.
Yeah, the NCAA is just complicated. So they've been having the conversation, and they've been receiving pressure to dismantle amateurism for decades. I know there was a South Park episode in 2010, and Mark Emmert, who is or was the CEO of NCAA, or whatever the CEO title is there, the king of NCAA, was super adamant about, I don't know,
the king of amateurs. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The king of amateur sports.
yes, he was super adamant on maintaining amateurism. There was a lot of controversy because amateurism was effectively a way to just deprive students of deriving any benefit other than a full ride, which is, there's a cap to the benefit that can provide for their incredible talents and their incredible dedication to their sports. So now that it's gone, there's a lot more potential for esports programs to blossom, and then also kind of start overlapping with the non-traditional gaming communities on a campus. So the FIFA players, the Madden players, the fraternities, sororities, etc.
Honestly, it's funny you mentioned it, because we did have UK men's basketball in this very room playing the Genji Tigers in a friendly little competition in NBA 2K, and that's all over social media. You can see.
That's so cool.
So I mean, it was incredible, and the 2K players lost the game to actual basket. I thought that was. I mean, it tickled me to death just to see. The room was real quiet whenever that happened, because you never see a professional lose to an amateur, but saw it that day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's never been so loud. Oh yeah,
they'll play hundreds of hours of a video game over the many releases that FIFA's had, because I think they're 2Ks. I think that's also an annual franchise.
Oh yeah.
And then they'll be like, "Oh no, I'm not a gamer."
You sure? You sure? Everybody loves.
I want to check that data again.
Yeah, check them numbers, my guy. Check them numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So just a couple more questions left here. The biggest one is, well, not the biggest one. Every question's the biggest one. They're all very important.
These are all equally world-changing questions. They're all
the last
good.
question is the most important question, but we're not there yet. We'll get to that one momentarily.
I can't wait.
Young people,
stay tuned, listeners.
Stay tuned. Last question. As young people start thinking about college, what advice would you give them when they're, talking about college, when they're thinking about what they're going to do, esports related, non-esports related, talk to their parents about college and esports? What is some advice you would give to prospective students, these young guns?
Prospective college students or prospective gamer students? Okay.
Or both. Take your pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, most gamers, by the time they're graduating high school, probably had a conversation with their parents about the pros and cons of having gaming as a habit. There are objectively a lot of cons associated with the gaming habit. It can be addicting, just like anything else a human can do, but gaming in particular can be engineered to be more addictive than most activities. Some mobile games literally have people who are gaming psychologists and are like, all right, how do we hook these people? So there are darker sides to this amazing ecosystem that we all know and love. And for the most part, parents will only see the darker side. What they don't understand, though, is as universities adopt gaming in a more official capacity, they are kind of pulling that gaming ecosystem out into the light a little bit more and shining a light on it and empowering the beneficial aspects of it, while kind of positive reinforcing away most of the negative ones. So the kids are being pulled out of their dorm rooms to go visit the Cornerstone. The huge negative element of gaming for me when I was in college was I couldn't play outside of my dorm room. So I ended up kind of self-isolating a little bit and losing out on a lot of social opportunities I would have had I been, a Smash player or whatever. Smash players, lame.
Hey, whoa, hold on. Wow.
No. Would never seriously.
I cannot believe what I'm hearing.
No,
I'm gonna tell Heath on you.
That was like a backhanded compliment, because Smash by default is an in-person event, and you guys can attest to the incredible communities that have flourished around Smash because it's mostly in person.
Oh yeah.
So students should have that conversation with their parents. Be like, this is a part of my life. It's something that I enjoy, but I don't want it to take it. I don't want it to take over. I know you're worried about all the different weird directions that gaming could go. They've seen that South Park episode of that kid in his mom's basement, just basically enslaved by World of Warcraft. Yeah. That's a hyperbolic example, but it is very much an example of how gaming can take over a life if it's not used properly. So have that conversation with your parents. Be like, there are beneficial aspects to this. I could see a potential career in this. There are scholarships that I can get for being involved in my esports program at XYZ schools. So do your research, know which schools offer what. It's difficult to do that right now because information about scholarships is very scattered from school to school. But no less than any other information for a school is scattered. So while you're looking at the best major to pursue at an individual school, try to find the gaming club, try to find the esports or varsity programs. You should try to go to a school that has some sort of formal esports program. If you are a gamer, it's just going to be an objectively better experience. There are gamers on every campus. It's kind of silly that at this point there are still schools that say, "Oh no, we're not going to acknowledge that 80% tile of our students who play games because of the negative stereotypes." They need to acknowledge them and then uplift them and bring them out into the open, give them a safe space to play and meet people. I'm ranting, but tell them all the incredible stuff that's happening. Do your research. Make sure you have a good idea of what direction you want to go in. This is something I was talking with Trenton earlier about. I wanted to absolutely drive this point home. There's this pressure when you're 17 or 18 years old to just pick your future. You're the entire rest of your future. At least that's how it feels. And most students are not lucky enough to be able to say, "Oh, I want to do this, then this, then this, then I want to retire at 64 and move to Malta or whatever." No, for the most part, when you're 17 or 18, you don't have that plan built out. But what I want to tell you is most people that are 35 or 40 still don't have that plan built out. There's this kind of mystique around adulthood that I think the boomer generation in particular liked to craft, where it's like, "Oh, we are mysteriously completely secure in what we want to do and where we're going to go, and we're going to do this for 20 years, then we're going to do this, and then we're going to retire." The pressure isn't really there, and the reality of it is most people who are seemingly functional adults, myself included, still occasionally feel lost, still occasionally feel disoriented about like, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. This is something that I like to do. This is my career path. So I just want to kind of dissolve that mystique and that impression that the older generations like to impart on young people, that old people know what they're doing. They know. Maybe they have a better idea and they have a better safety net to kind of mess around and tinker with their careers and figure stuff out, but you will be figuring out who you are your entire life, and you do not need the decisions you make when you're 17 or 18 are not going to make or break the rest of your life forever. So pick a major that sounds like it could be fun. Pick a backup major that also sounds like it could be fun, and then pick a third one. Have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. If esports is one of those, double down on the other two as well, because esports is very volatile. It's difficult to find a career still to this day. It may not be difficult to find work, but it's difficult to find a career that actually acts like a career because it's a very immature ecosystem, which means it's very hard to get a solid, consistent job with stable pay and benefits. Have a plan A that isn't esports. Esports should be your plan B or your plan C, or just something you do on the side, and try to figure out, okay, if I want to be a weatherman, this is what my plan A major should be. Plan B will be that I make it big in League of Legends and I win a bunch of scholarships and a bunch of prize money, and then I win LCS. Plan C is I do this other major that could also make me a weatherman. And I think that's my answer. I kind of ranted there. Long story short, when you're thinking about going to a college, do your research on what the gaming culture looks like there. Make sure that you know that if you're going to be playing games at school, that you are going to be playing them in a balanced and safe environment, because they can very quickly get out of hand. Numerous times I missed classes to play games, and it always bit me in the butt. So don't do that ever. Don't make any exceptions. It's not, you can play the games later. You have to go to that class. You can't redo that class without a lot of cost. And then, don't play fast and loose with your future, but make a few decisions based, like follow your instincts, try to find directions that you can start heading in that might end up being your passion, but don't feel pressured to find your passion in the most volatile, complicated 2 years of your life. Because that's what 17 and 18 are. And then 19, 20 are crazy too. And then you turn 21 and you're old and you can just retire because you have everything figured out.
Hey guys, can I hop in here with a question from chat? We had one person talking about kind of as esports programs and gaming has been legitimized, are we going to see more about the mental health aspect of it and maybe those resources on campus?
I hope so. I personally believe that we are in a mental health epidemic. And the gamers are certainly not exempt from that. In fact, because gaming is a less directly social activity, I think we're more susceptible to it. Or at least the kind of negative spiral that can happen when you're in a depressive episode or you're having social anxiety, etc. I personally have an anxiety disorder. And I'm proud of it because, well, I fought it alone for so long before realizing, oh, wait, there's a psychiatrist that can help me. There's medications that can help me. I don't have to fight this alone. I overcame the stigmas that I had internalized about mental illness and started getting treatment and started asking for help. And because of that epidemic, I feel like schools, universities are obligated to acknowledge that this is a very real facet of many of their students' lives. And like I said, these students are in the middle of the most chaotic years of their life. That doesn't make it any better and usually makes it worse. So, I don't know specifically what will happen on the frontier of mental health, but I really hope that gaming organizations out there, gaming like varsity and esports programs at universities, acknowledge that there is a mental health crisis ongoing. And there was one ongoing before COVID. Now that we've all been literally boxed up for a year and a half, it's certainly not better. It's almost guaranteed to be worse. And we just need to get together and say, hey, this is a chemical imbalance that happens in our brains. We can't help it. And we're not going to be ashamed of it. And in fact, we're going to actively work to unravel the negative spirals that can start happening by sharing experiences, building safety nets, and building communities where it's okay to not be happy 100% of the time. Another thing they should do is, well, I don't know how they'd fix this, but find a way to, no, I can't think of anything there. Yeah, that's all I can think of. It's a tricky question, but hopefully I gave it some sort of an answer. And I sprinkled in my own little gems there.
Well said on both the last two questions. Huge, just huge. Both of them, massive.
Thank you.
Well, we're just about out of time here. It's been incredible, Billy. I will say it's you've had every story you've told had me enraptured this whole time, especially name, image, likeness, last bits, the last bit on campus, college choices on mental health. I mean, those are for all college students. They need to hear that and they need to listen, because you hit the nail on the head 3 times over. That thing is sunk. That's definitely something they need to consider. The last question here today, posed by Heath Price. Who wins in basketball, the UConn Husky or the UK Wildcat? The most important question today.
So you alluded to that earlier.
That was the big secret.
I was like, wait, what are the Wildcats? I've personally never heard of them. No, just kidding.
About to get up from this desk and walk out. Cannot believe it.
Can we retroactively remove this from Twitch, please? I'm just kidding.
I might have to after that. Lord.
I was never really big in sports. From what I know of UConn, we would win women's basketball, and Kentucky would win men's basketball.
Okay. What about
I never
esports?
really got into the esports.
As a curveball,
Kentucky would win 100%.
Really? You guys have been around since 2012.
Oh, well, I know you'd think we'd be good, but because we never really got the university involved, we don't have momentum from 2012. So we have a bunch of disparate years and just like progress that we've made. Honestly, most of the progress that happened at UConn happened after I left, and I can say that I'm not too proud to say it. But that progress was still gated by the fact that we never really convinced our university administration that we were legit and that we were worth their time. So people like Heath are one in a million, these champions that exist on like within a university staff who can say, yes, I understand what this is and I understand the value, and we're gonna 100x that value by acknowledging it and enriching it as a school. So there was a really kind of frustrating but also awesome element of collegiate esports in particular, where a random group of 5 students could come out of the woodwork and just obliterate a highly recruited and highly trained varsity team. It was really problematic in the early years because it's difficult to justify scholarshiping a team that will just get wrecked by a bunch of like random Overwatch nerds on a campus. So UC Berkeley, for example, had this incredible rock star team that they stumbled upon almost completely by accident. So that phenomenon could happen. UConn could randomly have, 5 really good Valorant players, or 3 really good Smash players, but 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, the varsity program will win out over that random cohort of kids. And those kids will have potentially scholarships, they'll have mental health support, they'll have the support system of their entire university and student body behind them. And you can't lose when you have that much behind you. Or you can, but it feels a lot better when you do.
Definitely. All right, luckily here at UK, we've got a rock star group. And of course, like you said, Heath Price, who's always been helping. I caught Heath playing Punch Out with one of the other people for the university right before I came in here, and I was tickled.
Wow,
he was rocking Glass Joe. It was great. Of all people, Glass Joe. All right, well, Billy, this has been fantastic. We're just out of time here. Thank you so much for coming on the Cornerstone commentary. It's been absolutely incredible hearing your insight on collegiate esports and just the stories and the history and everything you've done and been through over the last 8-ish years. I mean, or 8-9 years. Thank you so much.
Of course. Come on, I got to see if I can get Lily in the shot. Okay. There's my baby.
I take it back. This is the most important part of the Cornerstone commentary. The dog segment. Everybody involved. This is the dog segment.
She's been good. She's been waiting behind me, looking out at the rabbits and stuff.
It's
and
time
not
for
hunting
walkies.
them. Yes. Oh yeah, she's learned to walk. Or she.
All right. Well, we won't keep her from her walkies too much longer. This has been the Cornerstone commentary presented by the University of Kentucky Federal Credit Union. This is Billy Sprout, the Director of Collegiate Esports at Mainline. I'm Trenton Upchurch for the University of Kentucky. Thank you all for joining us here at the Cornerstone commentary. Have Have a good one and take it easy. We'll catch you next month.